I'd like to tell all of you a story. This story is about a young man. This young man, he was a lot like you. He wasn't fast, he wasn't strong, and he spent a lot of his time alone. He preferred the company of stories to people. To him, people were chaotic and loud, and he enjoyed sitting in front of the TV more than he did interacting with people. It gave him comfort, it gave him safety. And at the same time, he loved imagining himself in his favorite TV shows. He loved to think of himself as the hero of the story, the most powerful character, the one who would come and save everyone else. He imagined himself as the hero of his own story. But then that was when the questions came. What is a hero? What does it mean to be a hero? And that's where this journey starts. Hi, my name's Nate Borey. And if by now you haven't figured it out, that story is about me. When I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with high functioning autism, or Asperger's syndrome, or level 1 autism, if you prefer that terminology. And with that diagnosis came three challenges. The first was the inability to learn. The second, the inability to socialize. And this third, the inability to communicate. And along with those challenges, the people responsible for my well being, the ones who were in charge of making sure that I was going to be all right, my doctors, specialists, therapists, even my special education teachers, they all told me and my family that I might never be able to graduate high school, that there was a good chance that I might have to live with my family for the rest of my life. Now, for a kid who had no understanding of reality, who spent most of his time retreated in stories, characters, and imagination, the world of fantasy, the idea of failure never really registered with me. I had no idea what it ever meant. And so, but with my family, that was where the fear set in. The idea of failure or the idea of having to take care of me for my whole life. It set them on a path to making sure that I would be all right, that I would be able to survive, that I would be able to graduate. And that's how they got involved with my special education program. This special education program was called California, no, Coastal Learning Academy. The entire focus of it was to make sure that from years 7 to 12, I would be in a safe area, protected, given the coping mechanisms necessary in order to be able to live in the real world. And it was my parents' job to make sure that the teachers in this special education program were given the proper amount of information so that they would come to understand me. But they didn't look for anything specific. They didn't try to instill something in this special education program. They actually worked together with it. The people who were in that program, they developed a close relationship with my parents. They communicated, they interacted, they made sure that I received the best services possible. And the one who was responsible for getting to really know me and getting to know my family was Jennifer Ramirez. This woman is like a mother to me. She defended me. She taught me. She instilled in me lessons of self advocacy, self reliance, and the ability to realize that at some point in my life, I was not going to have my family there to help me. I was going to have to be on my own. I was going to have to protect myself, take care of myself. At the time, I didn't really understand what it meant because at the same time, I had retreated into my own mind. I had retreated into the comfort of the stories that I had consumed. I had retreated into the characters I had fallen in love with, who had become my teachers and my mentors and my friends. There was a time when I was 12 years old that I had almost become nonverbal, that I had retreated so far that I thought I would not be able to get out of that darkness. But in that moment, in the darkness, I had someone there to help me, to reach in and pull me out. See, while everyone else had tried to bang at the door of my mind to get me to answer it, to break me out of that trap, my dad, he used a different method. Instead of banging at the door, when I sat down and watched television, my dad, he would slipstream and he would sit down on the couch with me. He would ask me questions of, Nate, who are these characters? Or, Nate, what's going on here? Or, Nate, can you tell me what's happening right now? And when I would have been silent to anybody else, in that moment, I responded in complete sentences. I told Dad, this is what's happening here. Or Dad, this is this character. Or Dad, let me tell you what's happening right now. The walls had shattered. I had finally opened up to somebody I could trust, somebody who listened, someone who could hear me. And what was so amazing was as I was consumed, was when I retreated, I wasn't just in darkness, when I was consuming, I was learning. I had learned div advanced concepts, advanced rhetoric, and I would repeat phrases and words and complete sentences that I had heard from these TV shows and movies, and I would repeat them in the real world. To anybody else who didn't know me, these would seem like random blurts, total nonsense. But to me, I was talking not very well, but it was a start. After that, I got into high school. It took some time, but I did it. It was the best moment of my life because I had taken that first step into proving everyone who had told me this would never happen wrong. But that was just the first step. The next step was figuring out what I wanted to do. So, my first year, I decided to join a team. I could have chosen anything. I could have chosen the chess club, the glee club, the drama club. I could have chosen anything that would have been even remotely simple to help my brain function, to open my mind. But at the time, I was 235 pounds, I was overweight, and I needed to lose. I needed to lose some weight. So I joined the wrestling team. I chose the hardest sport imaginable, and it ended up being the best decision I ever made. Though that first day, I felt like I had stepped into the unknown. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I had never done anything even remotely physical before. So when I came to practice that first day, I was in the dark. I met Coach Craig, and the first thing he tried to do was he tried to touch my shoulder. And in that moment, I recoiled. I didn't like being touched. And here's the thing about wrestling, it is literally touching. So, how was I going to wrestle? Well, Craig had the answer. He paired me up with our heavyweight coach, Jason. Uh, Jason, he had become my best friend on the team. I had I don't know what it was. Maybe it was we were both similar in size. Maybe it was because he was soft spoken and he knew what it was like to be me. Or maybe it was just I could trust him. I don't know why. But Craig said, Jason, you're going to be paired up with Nate and you're going to teach him. Oh, and that first practice, I was sucking pond water. If anyone's ever done wrestling before, if anyone's ever gone through the experience of practice, there is nothing like it. It's like being put through boot camp. One minute you think you're going to be a star, the next you're going to be on your knees, sucking pond water, sweating bullets. That was my first day. And Jason, since I had never figured out how to wrestle beforehand, he pushed me around that mat like I was a freaking wheelbarrow. I remember the sensation. I remember his arms on my shoulder. I remember being I remember the feeling of his hands on my shoulders and being pushed backwards on the mat. It was it was insane. I had no strength. I had no idea what was going on. And from there, I felt like this was never going to work. I kept thinking, I'm going to quit. I'm going to give up. I'm never going to be able to finish this season. And no matter how many times I kept thinking that, no matter how many times the thought kept popping into my head, and it was every single day of every single practice, I kept coming back. I don't know why. Something was pushing me towards it. Maybe I just wanted to lose weight. But during tournaments, I didn't want to compete. I much preferred to sit down in the bleachers and if anybody remembers these days, if you remember those days, we didn't have iPhones. We had iPods. iPods had these tiny little screens, barely the size of your eyes. And I had on my iPod a whole collection of movies and TV shows that I loved to consume. And I would sit on the bleachers, watch that tiny little screen, and not even bother to compete. That was how I maintained my comfort. That was how I retreated into my safe area, but how I ignored the real world. But it wasn't long after that that once the summer off season came around, that I started to take the next step in my journey on the wrestling team. I started to win matches, tournaments. I started to get this excitement that pushed me towards the next season. My sophomore year, I was ready to go. We hit the next tournament, and I jumped into my only match that semester. It was amazing. I was aggressive. I was mean. I attacked my opponent, and I won. I won. It was the first time I had felt accepted by my team. I had felt like I had kickstarted something that wanted to push me towards the next level. And I felt like I was going to keep going. Sadly, it didn't last. Shortly after that tournament, I had an accident. I I broke the tip off of my femur. It was a serious enough injury that I was out for the season. So serious, in fact, that I had to get surgery. They had to pin the bone back together. And in that moment, when I had finally recovered after months of being in a wheelchair, struggling to get around my high school campus, I was left with a choice. I could either continue on with wrestling or I could bow out. Now, if I had chosen to go back to wrestling and compete, there would have been a chance I might have permanently damaged my knee. And if I had decided to quit, I could continue on with my education. So I decided that I would end my wrestling career. It just wasn't worth it to put my knee at risk and to put my health at risk. And there are times where I do regret that decision because I felt like I had let my team down. And there were times, even today, where I never got the chance to say how sorry I was, or I never figured out how to say sorry. But even though I said goodbye to wrestling, I never said goodbye to the lessons I had learned there. I never said goodbye to the saying, champs are made, not born, and to the saying, pain is just weakness leaving your body, which I had remembered as pain is fear leaving your body. And for me, the fear of missing out, the fear of failure, that was the weakness that was in me. But I carried those lessons forward to my education. I carried it forward to eventually graduating high school, to accomplishing the goal that those who told me I would not be able to. And after that, I was on to the next stage of my journey, which was getting into college, which I did. I got into community college, which I weaseled my way through. I didn't take it seriously at the time. I didn't think I needed to take it seriously at the time. Eventually, I got my associate's degree. It was a long road. But then this was when humility started to settle in because I got into Cal State San Marcos for my bachelor's degree. And that was when I learned I couldn't weasel my way through anything. I had to do the work. I had to push myself. I had to sit down, read the textbooks, do my job, and get A's in the classes. I didn't do that my first year. And in response, I failed two courses. That set me down into a path of fear, of failure, the idea that this was the end of the road. But after that first year, I pushed forward. I started to do the work. I did do the work. And I got my bachelor's degree. Then it was on to the next stage of my journey, getting my master's degree. And that was an even harder road because I had imposter syndrome the entire time. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I wasn't meant to be there and that I was going to fail every single semester. Every single time I felt like I had gotten a bad grade on one of my assignments, I felt like this was the end. I felt like there was no way I was going to succeed, that every time something went wrong, that was it, I'm done. But that wasn't the truth. I managed to get A's in almost every single one of my classes. In the 2 years, I only had one class where I got a B. A's all around. How the heck does a kid with autism get A's in grad school? You tell me. Hard work, determination, the will to keep doing it, the will to keep moving forward. Now, I'm teaching public speaking at San Diego State University. I now have the honor of taking what I have learned as a public speaker and passing it on to the next generation. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that this would happen to me? I certainly didn't. But I'm still willing to move forward. And that's the point. That is what it means to be a hero. The ability to move forward means you have the will to overcome any obstacle put in front of you and to come to the realization that you can have every person around you who supports you, who loves you, who cares about you. But eventually, you are going to have to do the work. You're going to have to commit. You're going to have to be accountable for yourself and to be the hero of your own story. So I ask you, how are you the heroes of your own story? Thank you.